All right, so for anyone unaware, for the past couple days, the Gloomhaven subreddit has been working on a community class tier list for Frosthaven, which is good. I have been let off the hook. I no longer have to finish this series because we can just refer to that for any of our tier list wants and needs in the future. I don't really want to talk about the list very much. I do have some differences of opinion, shocker, rip Geminate, but the big thing that really surprised me was the number of reactions to Deathwalker's placement on the list. And maybe it is just a minority opinion, but I'm not all red because I'm sunburned. I'm all red because I'm nervous. I'm about to get flamed for my Deathwalker opinions. But I'm not changing them. I'm sticking with my opinions, but people are not going to like this. Deathwalker is an insanely cool shadow melee ranged assassin class built around darkness and portals. So if you're looking to fill the void in your heart that Portal left there 17 years ago, this is the class for you. Deathwalker's main mechanic are her shadow tokens. So she can have up to 5 shadow tokens on the map at any point in time, and she uses them to perform her abilities. So she can throw a shadow at somebody for some damage, she can attack through a shadow, or teleport to shadows, and probably some other stuff that I've missed. The shadows are not allies to you. They are not summons. They are exactly what they sound like. They are shadows. They don't take up any space. So a hex that has a shadow token in it is still empty. The only thing that cannot go there is another shadow. So they can't stack on top of each other, but they don't take up any space. Now, there are a couple ways to generate shadows, but we're really only going to talk about one of them right now, and that is Call to the Abyss. On the top of this card, we have a persistent lost ability. Whenever you are attacking something, after you have chosen your target, but before pulling your attack modifier, so before you know how much damage you're going to do, you do not have to, choose to mark that target. When a marked target dies, they will drop a shadow in the hex they occupied or any hex adjacent to it that doesn't have a shadow in it already and isn't in a wall. You can only have one enemy marked at once. The most important part of this ability is that you can get more than one shadow in a single turn with it. And we want to use this ability to get a shadow every single turn. So if you are using this attack here, Forceful Spirits, attack for 2, Consume Dark to make it attack for 3, hit 2 targets in range 2. So we could go first for this Hound. We would always want to make sure we target this Hound first, because he dies. If we have the Dark, he dies with a -1. If we do not have the Dark, he dies to a 0. We would draw our attack modifier after choosing to mark him. He would die to that attack, and then we generate a shadow either in his hex or any hex adjacent, and then we attack the next Hound. We choose to mark him because we don't have anything marked right now. Even with a -1, we're still going to deal a damage. You don't have to deal any damage to leave them marked. And now this guy is marked. If an ally kills this guy later in the round, we will get the shadow, and then we will have gotten 2 shadows from a single turn. And that is by far the most important mechanic for Deathwalker, and the thing that took me the longest to fully grasp and understand and conceptualize. The biggest problem that faces Deathwalker is that she has been the unfortunate subject of an extremely horrendous propaganda campaign. And that is that there are multiple people that say that there is such thing as the melee Deathwalker. The melee Deathwalker should not exist. The melee Deathwalker is a C tier build. So for anybody, in the comments of that Reddit thread saying that Deathwalker was ranked way too highly, if we only had access to the melee Deathwalker, I would agree with you. The thing is, the ranged Deathwalker exists, and so it's much more efficient to play the bottom of Strength of the Abyss, a second persistent loss that we will play along with the top of Call to the Abyss, and then with this, anytime we are performing any attack or move ability, but mostly for the attacks, we can consume any shadow within range 3 of ourselves to increase our damage of the attack. So Forceful Spirits, if we had the Dark, it would be a 2-target attack 3. We could eat 1 shadow to turn this into an attack 5 and an attack 3. And the goal is to do that every single turn. Every single turn, you buff up one of your attacks to get +2 damage, and you leave at least 1 target marked, and hopefully, at least once per rest cycle, you're able to get 2 shadows in a single turn and build up extra shadows through Call to the Abyss. And then when we have those turns where we generate multiple shadows, we're able to take turns where we spend multiple shadows. And that's where a lot of the power comes from. If the turn we played for this round was Anger of the Dead at 14 speed, wound all enemies in hexes with shadows, and then whenever an enemy walks through a shadow, they also get wounded. We could do that to wound this elite hound. This is a level 4 elite hound. level 4 Elite Hound with 11 health and 2 retaliate. Well, we can attack him from all the way across the map with Fluid Knight, attack for 5. We perform the attack as if we were occupying the shadow. You are able to target people even though you can't stand in their hex normally. This would be an attack for 5, and it would set dark. We would lose this shadow, and with Strength of the Abyss, we could eat this shadow as well, get an attack for 7. Maybe, since this is a melee attack, we can maybe buff this up, make it an attack for 8, and then maybe you would use advantage or something, and then we look at Deathwalker's amazing deck. Okay, I didn't actually know that this +2 was there. I put this +2 here, this +2 dark here. I didn't know the other one was there. And so that was an attack for 8. It did 10 damage, and look at that. This level 4 Elite Hound was basically just one shot, and we can leave him marked so he'll die to the wound, and then we get the shadow out of him when he dies to that wound. And this is just a level 1 Deathwalker, just doing level 1 Deathwalker things, one-shotting elite level 4 enemies. Now, I know it sounds like we've been going through a character guide up until this point. That is not the goal. That was not what I intended to do when I hit record. Let's get into the rankings for the tier list. And also, I just want to throw in real quick, absolutely no hate towards anybody who left any of those comments on the Reddit thread. I just want to change your mind here, that Deathwalker is high tier. So each of these categories are scored 1 through 5, meaning 3 would be average. For initiative, Deathwalker gets a 4.5, movement of 4, bossing of 4.5, support of 3, stamina just a measly little 2, and damage of 5. Deathwalker is starting out with a nearly perfect score. We get a 4.5 out of 5 for our initiative, which is pretty good, just not quite Blinkblade levels of broken. We start with Anger of the Dead, which is very nice. This does not suffer from fastest card syndrome like a lot of classes have, where their lowest initiative is most of the time relegated to a move 2. I think that this card is very, very good. I love positioning shadows the turn before, and then being able to wound like 3 or 4 targets. Maybe not 4, 2 to 3 targets with the bottom of Anger of the Dead. Really, really nice, especially against stationary targets like Deep Terrors or Ancient Artillery. And then the top's playable. Mostly you want to just use it to clean up all the shadows at the end of a scenario for some experience. Next fastest card, we have a 19, so it's still sub 20. It just doesn't feel as good first most of the time. And the action on it is okay. Like, you can get a little bit of top movement on it. Most of the time for me, though, this is just going to be an attack for 3. So attack for 3 at 19 initiative is kind of but it's fine. Fluid Knight is a very, very important card. It's definitely our best attack. Attack for 5. If you have Strength of the Abyss, you can make this an attack for 7. And it's at 24 initiative, which is going to be fine probably 70% of the time, maybe 75% of the time. 24 is going to be fast enough, but we really, really wish that we could maybe make this a 14 or so, which I think is why Boots of Speed are the recommended starting item on Deathwalker, and they're definitely my recommended starting item. I love them just to make sure your Fluid Knight is going to go fast enough to underspeed something's dangerous actions and kill it before it gets its turn off. Especially because most of the time you're going to have to pair this card with like Dark Fog, which is at 46, which is a bad initiative, but being able to move a shadow for 5 is a very good action to be able to perform. So it's kind of okay that it's at a bad initiative. That's how it's balanced out. Other than that, we can't move shadows non-loss until 28, which isn't horrible for initiative, but it's not amazing. It also does have like an okay top attack. This is attack for 5 if you have dark and a shadow to eat, so not bad. When it comes to our late initiatives, Lingering Rod at 64, not always slow enough, but it's pretty good. Move 3 and poison something when going late is very nice. If the monsters can come closer to you in the 30s or 40s or 50s, and then you close the rest of the gap and poison them and hit them for 4 with Shadow Step or something like that, that's not a bad turn. Not at all. Not bad at all. Call to the Abyss is very interesting because it's really not an initiative card at all. If you're playing the top, you don't really have a turn because you're just setting up the top. If you're playing the bottom, you're either doing it to bring in a shadow to make a summon, which you don't care about your initiative at that point. You'd probably rather go at 96 than 82, but what's the difference really most of the time? Or you're playing it with Fluid Knight. And if you're playing it at Fluid Knight to make a shadow and attack something and kill it, then you obviously want to go fast, not slow. So Call to the Abyss really just is not even an initiative card, even though it's nice and late at 82, which is kind of why one of the reasons, at least. I don't like the melee build where you bring in a bunch of shadows on turn 1 and then you just try to keep those shadows with you the whole scenario. Like this 86 speed move 4 is so good. Like you do not want to give up this action at this initiative to be able to position yourself in the perfect spot. This is just really, really nice to have. So 86 speed move 4, love the card, which makes me not want to play the loss on it. And then Sunless Apparition can fill a pretty similar role to Eclipse, a 96 initiative, teleport to any shadow. So this could be a lot more than move 4, or it could just be turned into a move 2 if you don't have any shadows in position. It does have a loot on it as well, so you can do like the top of Shadow Step, move onto a shadow, then get your loot, and then teleport to another shadow further away. If you have that lined up really well, that can be quite nice for you. And then the summon itself is fine. It summons, you always want to summon them in late. Only 1 health on him, but he's a non-loss summon, so paying a shadow to get off should at least be 1 attack for 3 is okay. But if you can summon this guy and he's just like attacking an objective and not getting hit, or he's just attacking somebody and you have another ally tanking for him, he has very, very high DPS. So a good summon, not a bad card. All right, I'm gonna go on a bit of a tangent here that's not related to initiative, but don't worry about it. First of all, we will talk about initiative, though. So leveling up, level 2, we have good initiative cards either way. You get an 11 or a 20. So a new fastest card or a new third fastest card. I really like everything about Restless Spirits. Move a Shadow 4 and make something suffer 3 on the bottom. And that's a choice. If you just want to move the Shadow 4, you can do that. That's a really, really nice action. I really, really love that. The top is fine. Deepening Despair, it's a lot harder to get the top on this card to work. It sounds like it should be relatively easy, but having 2 shadows in position is harder than it would sound. This card, you don't attack from the shadow, so you do actually have to have line of sight as well, which can be a little frustrating. But it does set dark, which is nice, and it has a very good lost bottom. Level 3, we have either Ritual Sacrifice at 13 or Deadbolt at 88, and I really, really, really like Deadbolt. 88 initiative is very, very good. Move all of your shadows for 3. So this sets up Anger of the Dead amazingly well because you're able to go super fast and get a whole bunch of wounds on things. It also sets you up for something like, I'm going to move a shadow close to me so that I can eat it with Strength to the Abyss. I move a shadow onto an enemy so that I can Fluid Knight them. And then I move a shadow towards the next room because I'm going to teleport there as soon as I'm done. There, you need a lot of like planning when you're playing this card, but it's very, very good and it's very late, which is really, really nice. Ritual Sacrifice, I think, is a bait card because it looks really, really tempting. It looks really, really nice. And I think that this card is actually one of the reasons that a lot of people don't like Deathwalker. And so let's get into the issues with it, right? 13 initiative makes it so tempting. You look at this card and it looks like it says 13 speed, attack 8, which is amazing. The problem is you give up so much if you're playing this card. First of all, you want to have as many shadows out as possible, which means ideally we have 5 shadows out. And so the ideal game flow for a melee Deathwalker is that you make 4 shadows on turn 1, and then you could make a 6th or a 5th one with Shadow Step, but most likely you're waiting until the 2nd rest cycle to get your 5th shadow, but then you're not spending any shadows, which means if no shadows are getting spent and almost none are getting generated, then all of your shadows are going to have to move with you throughout the whole scenario. And you want to keep them all clumped up, which means that they're not like spreading out to do cool things. And then Ritual Sacrifice is an attack 8. That's the benefit that you get for all of that. But it means that you can't be playing Fluid Knight, so you're missing out on an attack 5 every rest cycle to get this attack 8. And it means that you can't play Strength of the Abyss, which means that you're missing out on 2 damage per turn if you are playing Ritual Sacrifice and trying to go into the shadows. So, you know, you give up 2 damage per turn and the ability to play the attack 5 loss, and you get an attack 8 and an attack 6. But it's very hard to keep the shadows up with you because you don't get the move all shadows for 3 on Deadbolt. So I think that Ritual Sacrifice is a bait card. With that said, I just want to show Like the one way it's really, really good. So you can play Shadow Step with Eclipse into a boss. Like you would only do this into a boss, but it's very good. So move 6, make a shadow, and then Eclipse. So you get 4 shadows in one turn. You played 2 losses for it, but we got 4 shadows. Cool. Next turn, you can play Wave of Anguish or Ritual Sacrifice or Strength of the Abyss. It doesn't really matter because all 3 of these cards, you just want to have a bunch of shadows. And you play Call to the Abyss. You get your 5th shadow. Now you can attack the boss for 8. You can attack the boss for 6. And then you can attack the boss for 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. It is a good combo. It's good for dealing with bosses. But when it comes to just regular gameplay, regular game flow, this 13 initiative screws everything over because it makes this card look really, really good. And it's just not. And we move from one bait card straight into the next. I've taken this card multiple times. I've played with this card a lot. And my opinion on it now is that it is just absolute bait. The problem is that, or the problem with the card itself, is that it's 77 initiative, which should be really good. It's nice and late, go after a lot of things, but absolutely nothing on this card wants to go late. If you're playing the Lost Top and baning something, you might as well have them die after their turn this round than next. If you're doing the bottom, you would never want to go invisible late. I guess unless you're already invisible. So if you just short rested or you stamina potioned back this card in some way, then I guess if you're invisible, then going late and moving and going invisible again is good. But well, but then you could still do that if you were fast, so it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter. It's just a bait card. It's like you don't want to do this at this initiative. You can pair it with Ritual Sacrifice, which is fine. You get a 13 speed, move 2, go invisible, and attack for 6 or so if you have 3 shadows next to the target. But it's just not really good enough. And this is another card like Call to the Abyss where like it's a late initiative, but it doesn't really ever want to be. So it's you don't get credit for being a late initiative when you're not really. Speaking of a late initiative though, we have like quite possibly one of the absolute best bottom actions in the game in the Night Takes Shape. And you know, I'm calling this a ranged build card because it's amazing, and you should always play the ranged build, and you should always take the Night Takes Shape because it's fantastic. I have actually summoned the top on this a couple times, and it actually is pretty nice. The disadvantage is decent. 5 health with disadvantage on every hit means that it's very likely to survive 1 attack, and attack 3, the damage can stack up pretty significantly, although it is the same damage output as our level 1 summon for fewer shadows. But the bottom, amazing bottom. There are 3 separate abilities here, which means that you can perform, you have to do them in order, but you don't have to do all of them. So you can move any shadow for 3 hexes. Okay, that's good. Late move any shadow. Then if you want to, you can teleport to that shadow, but then you do have to remove it. But move a shadow and teleport to it in the same action is really, really good. And then on top of that, we get an attack for 3. So if you want, you can just move a shadow, not teleport to it, and attack for 3 something that you're already next to. If there's something that's low, you know, it has 3 or 4 or maybe even 5 health, we can teleport next to it, remove that shadow, but attack the target and kill it and get the shadow right back. This is just, it's amazing. This is a very good card for damage output because it adds a super, super, super consistent bottom attack that we're always able to position ourselves and get extra damage out, and then we can get our shadow right back. I absolutely love the Night Takes Shape. One of the absolute best bottom actions in the entire game. If every class could use shadows, then every single class would love having this card. And then level 8, we have this nice 80 initiative, move 2 shadows up to 3 hexes, and make a target suffer either 3 or 5 damage if there's dark, if they're next to both of the shadows. And that is a lot of damage to be suffering on the bottom. So not bad at all right there. Deathwalker is a very strange character when it comes to movement. It's definitely the most unique movement in the game. And we're getting a 4 because we can be very good at it, but we can also feel a bit restricted. First of all, at level 1, we just do not have move cards. We have a move 3 Set Dark, and we have a move 3 Poison, and we have a move 4. And that's it. We don't get any other movement cards. So when it comes to moving, we're not that good. But That's fine because we have teleports. We have technically 3 different teleports, but really only 2. Sunless Apparition, you can teleport to any shadow, but you have to teleport directly onto the shadow. Forceful Spirits, you can teleport onto a shadow or any hex adjacent to a shadow, which that flexibility is nice. You have 7 hexes to choose from instead of just 1, but most of the time, Forceful Spirits should be played for the top. And Fluid Knight is the other teleport, but you have to be attacked, and you should also always play Fluid Knight for the top. So 2 cards that you really want to play for the top, and then Sunless Apparition that you can use to teleport from one room to the next when you're done. Or if you just want to teleport out of combat back to the beginning to stay nice and safe, you've got that too. So not that much movement, but the teleport does make up for it. Then we also have to move our shadows, which is very, very important. So at level 1, we do not have very much shadow movement. Black Mirage, move all shadows for 2. Okay. Wave of Anguish, move all shadows for 1. That's not very good. That means if you have a clump of shadows that you summon on turn 1, in an entire rest cycle, you can only move those shadows 3 hexes, which is not getting you to the next room. So we do not have the movement, the shadow movement, to bring in a bunch of shadows and move all of them to the next room, which means we need to be cycling through shadows, eating them, and summoning more. And that's where Strength of the Abyss comes in. Most of the time, you just use it for the +2 attack, and you try to get +2 attack every single turn, but very frequently I found myself with extra shadows moving from one room to the next. You might as well just add +2 move onto Eclipse or something, and then you move 6 getting towards the next room. Or you use Shadow Step Top to move onto a shadow, and then you use the move 4, and you had move 7 to get to the next room. So we have a lot of movement options, and like technically teleport isn't a move, but the fact that we can teleport just all across the board, and it's very easy for us to move a shadow for 5 with Dark Fog, have it be pretty far in front of us, attack something with Fluid Knight, mark them, they die, then we place the shadow on the other side, and now it's 7 hexes, and then we can move it for 3, and then we teleport, and we've teleported 11 or 14 hexes or something like that. And so we can close those gigantic gaps instantly. Very, very interesting. The one other card that I think is really important is the Loss Bottom on Shadow Step. This is a move 6, which this is just on-demand instant. I need to move a lot, and it makes a shadow, which doesn't necessarily sound worth it for a Loss card, but I think the tempo that this card provides is really, really, really potentially good. I love starting a fight with a boss with Shadow Step and Eclipse combined, but I also love storming the last room of a scenario by playing both of these cards at once. An ally opens the door, we go late at 86, we're going to move in 6, make a shadow, and then make 3 more shadows with Eclipse, and now we're entering the final room. We've already got 4 shadows ready to go if we want to do something like Wave of Anguish, or if we just want to do a nice big attack for 7 with Fluid Knight, if we want to wound a bunch of targets with Anger of the Dead. It's just a really, really nice way to set up your final room. And this on-demand move 6 is definitely playable, but it's not always necessary. We get some good cards as we level up. We already talked about a lot of them, so Night Takes Shape, insanely good to be able to move a shadow and teleport to it at the same time. Deadbolt doubles the amount of shadow movement that we have from level 1, since we can move all shadows for 3. Proliferation of the Abyss, we get to move up to 4 if we consume Dark, and move 2 shadows for 4 hexes as well, so move and move shadow is quite nice. Dominate, most of the time I want to play this card for the top, but the bottom is a move 4 set Dark, which I have played several times and not regretted, so pretty good. But really, there is just so much strength hidden in this card here, Deepening Despair. On this bottom loss, you and all allies can treat all hexes with shadows as adjacent to all other hexes with shadows during this round. And then you get to move 3. Which means to go from here to here takes 1, 2 points of movement. Which isn't that insane for Deathwalker, because she could already do this. But it's that way for all of our allies as well. And this completely breaks 3 kinds of scenarios. First, we have escape scenarios, right? All you need is vision of the final room. You can just get a shadow into that final room, and then you and all allies can just teleport from one shadow to another. Deathwalker can't escape yet, because if you escape, then your shadows get removed, but you can escape on the following turn, and all of your allies can escape this turn. So as long as somebody was able to open to give you vision of this final room, then it doesn't matter if somebody was lollygagging in the first room or in the second room. People don't have to save all of their good movement cards to escape. They don't have to worry about completing the objective themselves, because Deathwalker can do it for them in just a single turn, which is just insanely cool. Furthermore, it is insane for escort the NPC ally. The general formula for a scenario like that is you have somebody and they're going to move 2 or 3 hexes towards some objective. They may stand next to it for a couple turns or something, and they're going to be infinitely spawning enemies to kill them. Well, if instead of having to move 2 4 times, if they only have to move 2 once or twice, and you're able to skip 2 turns of those infinitely spawning enemies, it makes these scenarios significantly easier. Deathwalker is just insanely good for breaking things, especially because, like, you can make 3 shadows. You know, say if we're like in this middle room here, you can make shadows in like all different directions, and then you can move all shadows for 6 with a loss. And you cannot move shadows through doors. I just don't want to click on these and show what's in this scenario. But the ability to move those shadows around and position them where you need, so that you can give this ally a shadow and give this ally a shadow, and then they can just all teleport to where you need to go, is crazy. And the last kind of scenario that is really good for is just a scenario that's really big, like this one, where you've got a whole bunch of different sprawling rooms. And, you know, it kind of seems like the idea for a scenario like this is like everybody splits off and takes their own room individually. But instead of doing that, you know, the party can go together, right? You could have like 2 people go to this room and 2 people go to this room, and one person open this door in the middle. Meanwhile, Deathwalker sends 1 shadow over here, 1 shadow over here, and 1 shadow over here. And then once everybody has cleared off their rooms, then we all just teleport to the next room, and we've saved moving 12 hexes on each of the characters, which is like 3, probably 4 turns for everybody. So we saved an entire rest cycle for everyone just by playing 1 loss on our 11 card class. So if movement can help with what the scenario is designed around, if it directly helps with the objective, or if it's clearly just a gigantic map that's designed to be a gigantic map that gets in the way, Deepening Despair is literally the best tool in the game for dealing with that. So we kind of already talked about bossing a little bit with my tangent earlier, but we're getting a 4.5 out of 5, and we don't actually have that many tools for bossing, but we're just very good at it. Wave of Anguish, of all of the starters, this is definitely the best bossing card. Each shadow gets to perform an attack for 3, and since we can have 5 shadows, that's 5 attacks for 3 into a boss. But obviously, you would love to buff this up as much as possible. If the boss can be poisoned, that's really nice. If you have any ability to increase all of your damage for the round, that stacks on top of this and is really nice. As we level up, we get Night Takes Shape, which gives us a bottom action that stacks with those buffs that go for the entire round. We absolutely love the Frenzy Potion as an item, so that can be really good if you know what that does. And then after we've taken our really big turn, it takes like a turn to set up, because it will Shadow Step and we'll Eclipse, move in, make all of our shadows, then use Wave of Anguish, and then we can start spending the shadows. So if you took Ritual Sacrifice, then you've got your attack for 8. But if you didn't, then you have Dominate with the bottom of Strength of the Abyss, so you get an attack for 8 and you're eating your shadows. And Fluid Night, you can attack for 7, you eat your shadows. Restless Spirits could be an attack for 8 and eat 2 shadows, or you could do attack for 7 with Fluid Night and use the bottom of Restless Spirits to make the boss suffer 3. We can get damage coming out at a pretty decent clip, just because we have such high base damage on so many of our attacks. One other thing that I think bears mentioning is this Lashing Tendrils loss. A lot of bosses are multi-target or have like some sort of AoE, and so most of the time you can just like place a shadow under each of your allies and have your allies stand close to the boss, And if you play Lashing Tendrils early, Retaliate 2, Range 2 doesn't sound that amazing for one turn, but if we think about over the course of 5 turns, if the boss is attacking, say, on average 2 people per turn, that's 20 damage that this Retaliate card did just completely for free, because the boss was going to get to hit us most of the time anyway. So, not required, but it is just free damage that can stack on top of while we're getting our Wave of Anguish off and everything like that. For support, we're getting a 3. We're not the best support in the game. We're not really even intended to be that much of a support, but we definitely do have supportive actions. First of all, we've got the Deepening Despair, which is the best ally movement card in the game by a lot, so that's got to be worth something. After that, we do have a bit of Cursing, which isn't direct support, but it does end up helping our allies. Most of our cursing is going to happen incidentally through the attack modifier deck and through our perks. And then we've got a little bit of rolling disarm. So like a little bit of conditions that can be thrown in there a little bit randomly. But then aside from that, we do have some planned crowd control. Vengeful Storm gives us a very, very, very good stun and wound on a bunch of targets. Perform this ability as if you were occupying a hex with a shadow. So, a shadow can get all 7 of these hexes in a nice big circle, and that right there is a pretty good stun. Pretty good stun on Vengeful Storm. Frozen in Fear is the exact same pattern, but it's just immobilize instead of stun, so not bad. Lingering Rot, we can set up poison for a bunch of our allies, a big AoE, that same AoE pattern, and poison anything in the area. And then we've got Dominate, which you can basically always be using. Pretty easy to get the Dark for this, to disarm, a nice big chunky elite. So we definitely have some options there. We can also give everybody permanent Retaliate 2 with the Lashing Tendrils, which isn't something that you want to play in every scenario, but I mean, especially if you're ever facing Living Spirits, there's this is very, very fun to play in a scenario like that with Living Spirits or Flame Demons or something going on like that. Furthermore, another card that I really want to talk about is Hungry Grasps, because this is like the card that I feel I underrated the most on Deathwalker, because it is insanely good. For up to 2 shadows on the map at the start of this action, you can perform attack 3, range 2, pull 2, which you think like, okay, 2 pull 2s, like whatever, that's not that good. But the thing is, like, you can move multiple shadows with your bottom while you play this. And so you can pull something from all the way out here. Let's just get this as an enemy. You can pull it from here to here. And 4 pull is like all of a sudden quite a lot. Basically, if there's a trap anywhere on the map, maybe the monster's not close enough to get to the trap this turn, but once they move 1 turn closer, they will be. And also, it's technically pull, but it works as push as well. If you can just get the shadows behind, then you pull something, or you push it away from you if you're down here. It's really, really good. And you don't have to hit the same target twice. This is a multi-target card, so we could hit 2 different targets to try to generate 2 shadows from it, or we could pull 2 different enemies in to set up one of our allies' AoEs, or to do something like the bottom of Vengeful Storm and stun 2 extra targets because we've pulled them in. So we have access to a lot of stuff that can be really good. A bit of crowd control, a bit of enemy positioning, and a bit of cursing. And we also have heal in Rest and Shade. Not going to happen very frequently, but this could theoretically be a nice heal 8 if your allies are all in shadows in between rooms. So good early game. So I maybe misnamed the stamina category a little bit. I'm thinking about changing it to durability for the rest of the list, but also I don't really want to go through and change all of the graphics, so let me know what you think, if durability is a better name for the category. But it's basically just how likely you are to exhaust in a scenario. So hand size plays a factor in it, but it's not just a 1-to-1, how many cards do you have. It's also factoring in how likely you are to play losses, can you be effective without playing losses, and then also being able to physically take damage. Tank damage is very important. So Deathwalker is just getting a 2, because we do not tank damage very well at all. That's not really our goal. Our goal is basically to build full glass cannon and attack things from really far away. So we don't need to be able to tank damage. And so then it really just comes down to our card stamina after that. And we do have 11 cards, which is very nice because a lot of our effectiveness is tied up in the losses. You're going to have to play a loss on turn 1 to get Shadows out, so either Call to the Abyss or Eclipse. Either way, now we're basically just a 10-card class, but really, you're going to need further losses after that. I highly recommend, at least in most scenarios, playing Strength of the Abyss, as long as there's not like... As long as there are more than like 10 enemies throughout the whole scenario, Strength of the Abyss is generally going to be pretty worth it. But then you also can get a lot of value out of Lingering Rot and or out of Wave of Anguish. So it can be pretty difficult going into a scenario, you know, if you've got 4 or 5 really good losses, and even if you play Call to the Abyss on turn 1, that doesn't mean that you can't play Eclipse later into a scenario. You know, when there are just a few turns left, you know, if you've got like 5 cards or so, that's a pretty good time to throw down Eclipse and then go for a really nice Wave of Anguish near the end of a scenario. So it can be very difficult to space out, like, am I playing Lingering Rot or Wave of Anguish? Do I need the Rest in Shade to move all of my shadows for 6 to set up a nice big Wave of Anguish, or am I going to be able to get away without it? Do I need the move 6 on Shadow Step? Like, we've got a very large number of losses, and they are all really good for the most part. You know, Fleeting Dusk is just a very nice AoE attack pattern, just like the Lingering Rot, but it doesn't eat your shadow. And Deepening Despair, we talked about how that can just win scenarios. Vengeful Storm, a big, huge AoE stun. So we have very, very good, very impactful losses. We're going to have to play 1 to 2 to maybe 3 of them to be effective at all. And then there's difficulty in finding your value in a potential 4th loss. But then given that we are an 11-card class, it is possible to just say, I'm just going to play Call to the Abyss on turn 1 because this is a really big scenario with a whole bunch of rooms. And then now I can abuse that stamina and just be more consistent throughout, and maybe not spike until the very end. So we can get there, but without any tanking potential to speak of, we're just going to be a 2. I don't want to be too much of a broken record, so we'll get through damage quickly, but we're getting a 5. I don't think that there's any character that's better at building towards full damage, just because we have so much range. We don't ever need to worry about any defenses ever. And we do have, obviously, some very good options. Strength of the Abyss is going to be a +2 to 1 attack on almost every single turn of a scenario, which is obviously very good. And we can just see how that augments our level 1 attacks to be definitely above average. If you can get the Dark for Forceful Spirits, which is very easy with something like Call of Doom or Fluid Night the turn before, then you get a 2-target, attack 5, and attack 3. Very, very good. Black Barrage, it looks underwhelming with just an attack 2, but Dark and eating 1 shadow, and this becomes a range 5 attack for 5. And hold on, that's like way too high for a ranged attack. They're not supposed to be that high. Wave of Anguish gives us very, very good bursting potential, especially when you throw items in there. And it's just really, really good. The one other thing that I really want to mention is that Deathwalker has the highest base damages in the game. With almost all of the Frosthaven classes, they were kind of designed to do a whole bunch of smaller attacks. Deathwalker is one of the few classes that has really high base damages, with something like Fluid Night with Strength of the Abyss giving an attack for 7, attack for 8 if you've enhanced it. And that pairs really well. High base damage pairs really, really well with Brittles and with Blesses. So if you have an ally who can Brittle or Bless, Deathwalker is one of the absolute best characters in the game to pair with that. You don't need to have it, but if those tools are available to a Deathwalker, she is the best to utilize them. So a very, very, very good damage piece for any party. And we will move on to the perks, which are very, very good. They are very solid. So we start out with remove 2 -1s, gotta love that, and then we can replace our -2 with a 0. So with just 2 perks, we're down to now only having 3 negative cards in the deck. And then the very next thing we see is remove 3 -1s. and replace them with +1s. So with 5 perks, we have 0 negative cards in the deck, aside from the miss. But with only one bad thing you can possibly draw, that just means that if you have some way to give yourself advantage, or if you have a glancing potion, you are guaranteed to be dealing at least your base damage by pulling a 0. And our base damage was really, really high. So very, very good in the modifier deck. Then we can replace some of those zeros with +1 curses. We get these +2 darks, which are nice. We saw that we thinned out the deck by removing these -2s, and then everything else we have is replaced, so we're still at 18 cards. And so then adding these +2 darks, now 3 of your 20 cards are +2, and then obviously your crit is really good with your high base damage. We've got Rolling Disarm. You never hate to see a Rolling Disarm. Rolling Muddle is next to useless, but Rolling Disarm, it can help. We have Rolling Heal Allies. That's fine. Not most important. Ignore negative scenario effects, so we don't have to add like tons of -1s to our deck, so there's even more consistency there. And then one of the absolute most important things for Deathwalker to pick up, whenever you long rest, you can move a shadow up to 3 hexes. Very, 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 very important, very solid, and it only takes 1 perk, and we saw that we're very, very perk efficient. Only 5, or like 6 perks total, because you probably want to take this one very, very early. But after 6 perks, we get our free shadow movement, and we have no minuses in the deck. Insanely good. You can grab this whenever you're in a shadow. All attacks targeting you have disadvantage. It's nice to know that you can't be crit, but you shouldn't be attacked very many times in the scenario anyway, and you can just take a chest piece that can do that same effect anyway, so not the most important thing there. And then whenever you short rest, you can consume dark to curse muddle something. I don't like to short rest. I hardly ever short rest, so not super applicable or important, but it doesn't matter. This is a very good deck. Nice and thin, you don't add tons of cards to it, and you get to take out all of the bad stuff. I love it. So if I were king for a day and tasked to make a change to Deathwalker, it would be to the level 1 shadow economy. Basically, on turn 1, you're going to have to play a loss. It's going to be either Eclipse or Call to the Abyss. If you play Eclipse, you can get 3 or 4 shadows out, and you have immediate power. You have those shadows, you can utilize them, but you can't really spend any shadows because you won't be replacing them if you do. So Eclipse feels a little bit, it's fine, it's okay. Call to the Abyss, if you play it, you're going to be generating a whole bunch of shadows throughout the scenario, but you don't have any yet. So you're taking your turn 1 to play a persistent effect that you need to play, but then you don't get any benefit from it on turn 1 or on turn 2. And then probably on turn 2, you were able to mark something, and maybe if everybody ganged up on it, you were able to kill it. And then maybe on turn 3, you have 1 shadow that you can use. If you got super lucky and somebody did a lot of damage on turn 1, maybe you have 2 shadows on turn 3. But most likely, you're not getting any benefit from playing Call to the Abyss until the 3rd turn of the scenario, and that's a very long time to wait to turn online. I don't think it would be too overpowered if Call to the Abyss top also just generated 1 shadow in the hex you're standing in. It's a little bit uncreative because then it's basically the same as the bottom of the card, except it's a loss ability and you generate more over time, but I think that's one way you could go about it. That it wouldn't be too overpowered of a change because it's only 1 shadow, and 1 shadow is about worth 2 damage, but it would just help smooth Deathwalker out and feel a lot better. When we hit level 4, we have Fleeting Dusk, and we can make a shadow with our bottom on turn 1 while we set Call to the Abyss, and that feels a lot better. And then if, by the time we hit level 4, we can make 2 shadows on turn 1 and get our Call to the Abyss up, all of a sudden, now we're cooking with gas. The other change that I would potentially recommend, and you definitely wouldn't do both of these, it would be one or the other. I think that one of the level 1 cards could be changed to be very similar to medium here, except not nearly this good. Attack for 5 at level 1 would be insane. Maybe the card could be something like attack for 1, consume dark to add another +1, so with dark you get an attack for 2, and then if this attack kills the enemy, place a shadow in the hex adjacent to where it was. I think that would be relatively fair, because you would need to use your dark It's only an attack for 1 or 2, but it can give us 1 extra shadow per rest cycle, which can, make it a lot easier to spend the shadows with Fluid Knight and spend the shadows with Strength to the Abyss. And this one might be a little bit too OP, but at level 1 as is, we just have 3 lost ways to generate shadows between Eclipse, Call to the Abyss, and Strength, or Shadow Step, move 6 and make a shadow in the hex you're standing, and then only 1 non-lost way to make shadows, and it's just really boring. Just make a shadow with your bottom and do nothing else. So I think that having a card like Medium at level 1 would be a nice change. All right, we finally made it. This one took me a really long time, over 2 hours longer than the Blink Blade did, but we've made it. It's time to rank the Deathwalker. And this is hard for me. You can probably tell from everything that I've said, my gushing review so far, that I absolutely love the Deathwalker. But that was not always the case. I did not like the Deathwalker very much when I first started playing it. But I forced myself to power through because I was convinced that Deathwalker Blinkblade would be the best 2 classes for a speedrun. And so I messed around with Deathwalker and I tried a whole bunch of things, and I just never felt the power that I was expecting from the cards, because I read a whole bunch of the melee cards. I'm like, I have attack 8, I have attack 6, I have this loss attack where I do so many attacks in Wave of Anguish, and it just never clicked. It never felt right. And then I think it was like the third like non-speedrun Deathwalker that I played, that I really tried to go into the bottom of Strength of the Abyss and play a ranged build and just eat all of my shadows as I went. And I was shocked at how much more powerful it felt and how much fun it was. It was a blast to play, and it felt extremely strong. So full disclosure, I started working on this list right after I retired my previous Deathwalker that I was playing in my Frosthaven Enhanced series. And in that party composition, I had a Blessing Banner Spear, and I had a locked class that could apply at least a little bit of Brittle. And it felt insanely strong. It was the strongest character I have ever played in Frosthaven or Gloomhaven. Like, it was crazy. I'm doing like attack 50 from across the other side of the map. It was so cool. And I definitively put Deathwalker as the strongest class in the game when I first made my list. Then I thought about it a little bit, and it's like, well, you really do kind of need a little bit of that scaling from your allies to be like that stupid, insanely busted. But if you can get Blesses and Brittle, then you really are that crazy. But also the level 9 cards really aren't very good, which I don't put that much value in, but like, if we were just talking about level 9 cards, then Blinkblade would be the best class, like, no matter what. But Deathwalker can't be the best class in the game. It just can't. And then I had it as the second best class, right above Blinkblade. And then I got invited to the Frosthaven beta, the closed Frosthaven digital beta, and I was playing that almost exclusively on the hardest difficulty available, mostly in 2-player. My first playthrough was entirely just Deathwalker and Blinkblade, and it felt fine, but on increased difficulty, Deathwalker is a little bit weaker. Also, in a 2-player party, Deathwalker is a little bit weaker because there aren't as many enemies, which means there aren't as many shadows that you're going to be generating. And if you are playing on increased difficulty, then it's a lot harder to kill the things, and it still felt good, just not nearly as good as the Blinkblade did that I was playing at the same time. And so that has made me decide to move Deathwalker down to A+. It's still a very, very, very good class. It starts okay, and if you've only ever played like an early game melee Deathwalker, I highly, highly, highly recommend you try out like a Prosperity 6, Prosperity 7 Deathwalker that goes a ranged build and has access to like really, really good items, because oh man, she is awesome. But that's where we'll leave it for now. Snowflake and then Fist to come, hopefully sometime this week.